Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Conversations in Pop Culture. I have with me Dachel Okamoto. I think I got it right. It's a
You got
bit
it.
hard to pronounce. Who is, I think, one half of the writer and the artist on Shotgun Samurai. So thank you for being on.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm actually excited because when I read this, my first reaction to this, because it's kind of a comic slash manga, is it's got a very much a desert punk feel, and it's kind of taken the samurai idea flipped up on its head. And I know that a lot of people haven't heard of Shotgun Samurai. So, what is the basic premise for this comic before we dive into it, and how did it come about exactly? So people get an
Ooh.
idea there.
Well, I guess I'll start with how it came about. It's kind of a funny story. Because me and, like you mentioned, I'm half of the writer and the artist. So the other half was my buddy in college. He's on the cover, Matthews, and he was he's kind of like a class clown kind of character. And he was doing a presentation in his public speaking class, and he just wanted to make it funny, so he did it about cosplay and everything. And I was like, well, aren't you going to cosplay as something? And he was like, I don't have a costume. And I'm like, of all people, you are not cosplaying as something. So then, he's half Japanese, so am I. And then he had a yukata, and and I was like, you have that, and I had a fake shotgun that I just made because yeah, whatever, why not? And I was like, why don't you be Shotgun Samurai? And he was like, but that doesn't exist. And I was like, it will now. And that night, I just scribbled out 5 pages, really fast, really crummy, and just photocopied them and made like stapled the book together, and then we handed them out in class, and people liked it. So then I decided, hey, why don't I do something with it?
So you have this basic idea because we got to unpack this,
hmm
and clearly it came up as an accident. I think it's safe to say, or
hmm
circumstantial. It might even be a better way to put it. But then, where did you go from having this basic idea almost as a joke to saying, let's actually run with this and let's build this upward? Because that's a very different decision between going from just throwing an idea and seeing what sticks to the wall to saying,
Mm.
we have an idea that could actually win. And I think it is going to win in the long run.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, actually, it's kind of it's like a what is it called? Like a perfect storm of situations. Like we were also one of our classes was we were studying philosophy at the time, and one of our classes was like religious philosophy. So and the teacher or the professor, he offered us, he was like saying, well, if you guys want to make a movie as a final project instead of an essay, go ahead. And I was like, hey, that sounds fun. So then we decided to take this concept and we're like, how can we shoehorn religion into it? So then we got the idea of like redemption, and basically trying to make up for your past. So then, and that was basically the starting point of like his backstory, and then his like, and then when we made that movie, which is on YouTube, by the way, also, um, and then so then we kind of just started diving into like deeper elements of like like guilt, redemption, like what makes a good person, what like different facets of like how to forgive and what requires forgiveness anyway. And then from that on, we decided to create backstories for these characters, and then we just opened up a door to like an entire like universe pretty much. And then we were like, hey, we got something here. Let's keep writing.
And let's talk about that because
Mhm.
clearly this story definitely has that samurai trope to it. And it
Mhm.
has that lone wolf and cub trope to
Mm.
it. It's got a bit of desert punk, as I mentioned, in it, or at least that's the way I read it, and a variety of other stuff from the anime worlds in there. And so, what is it like? Because there's also modernization where the main character carries a shotgun. And so, what is it like to take those two concepts and really fuse them together and get that redemption and that traditional samurai element that's in a lot of old school samurai manga, but then sort of have that gun element into it? Because there weren't many guns in Japan during the Tokugawa shogun era type scenario, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, basically, it throws a lot of like it. Honestly, it's a lot of fun for me to like just kind of introduce like this shotgun into like this world where everybody just thinks of samurai carrying swords. So everyone calls it a sword, like like a dragon sword because it makes a loud bang and looks like fire comes out. So they're just like that's some kind of magical dragon sword, and like they see the fire, they see someone die in the distance, so they think, oh, it must be he must have some kind of legendary weapon. So and I like adding that kind of mystique to it, like what why does he have it, where did he get it, and also just seeing how like his enemies react to it, um, and his allies like what they think of it too. But yeah, so I just think it adds a whole lot of fun to it.
And to even talk about that, because a lot of the allies he has, and then even the enemies he has, they have, ninja throwing stars and they have swords and they are following this, I guess, honor code. And in many ways, this character is also following a different honor code. And so it's very interesting to see their reaction. So, what is that like? Because how do you even put I guess, his enemies into that category of saying, oh snap, they're seeing a gun for the first time? It's kind of very odd.
Yeah. Um, so actually, shoot. The next the first enemy like this, the what I sent you was like the basic setup for like the whole story. And so basically, the next enemy he fights, he tries to come up. He like dedicates like most of his life to like finding out a way to overcome this shotgun. So he invents some kind of like a long distance,
Sniper rifle.
almost like a sniper rifle, yes, but without gunpowder. So it's a slingshot gun. So I don't want to ruin too much, but yeah, basically it's like it's so we see like enemies either come up with ways to like use their modern technology and what they assume his gun is, and try to find ways to get around it. Um, but also there will be just like you said, like the honor code. Sometimes the honor codes will come into play, which will which they will challenge, Shotgun Samurai's honor code as well, because they.
Yeah, and
But
even to jump off of that, so this is an odd read for me to some degree, and it's jumping off the honor code point because we do get those traditional Japanese vibes in it, but we also get this Americanization. I
mm,
mean, a shotgun is technically an American weapon,
hmm
and
hmm
but we have it being called a sword, and we have him eating ramen, and we have this honor code. And so what is it like to really create kind of this east versus west type mashup? And it's also drawn in a manga style in a lot
mm.
of ways. So what is that like as an artist? Because I think that really jumps off the honor code as well, and sort of throws that a little bit into the wind to some degree, and gives a little bit more flexibility.
Mm. Yeah, I think actually that kind of now that I think about it, it comes off a little naturally for me based on my upbringing, because I'm half Japanese and raised in America. So, and my dad's straight from Japan. So I have a lot of that like Japanese like upbringing at home, like, and also, throughout American culture as well. So I can kind of I've always liked to balance like the two, the East versus West in my mind, and like see like because like the kind of more rigid, hierarchical Japanese mindset, follow orders, follow your code, but also the American kind of more social, interactive, like self-expressive kind of culture. So I like to, I don't know, yeah. So shoot, but basically, like, so this kind of comes off naturally for me because I love shotguns and I also love samurais. So I think it's really fun to throw them two together, and also the tropes from anime and tropes from like American media as well.
And one of those tropes is the ramen scenes, and there's a
Oh.
bunch of them, and they're funny. They're funny. So I'm going to give a little context, and I don't think this is ruining too much. And if I
No,
am,
no.
I'll apologize in advance. So within the first few pages of this book, Shotgun Samurai burns down a ramen shop, sort of by accident, but sort of not by accident. And then the ramen guy, whose name is George, of all names, which is
Yeah.
just extremely American, he joins him, and then from then on out, and I'll explain during this entire ramen scene, like people are throwing like shurikens that cut his ramen, and they disturb Shotgun Samurai's ramen, and then following that, the shop gets burned down, and then he joins him, and then he gets attacked multiple times, and all these attacks happen and ruin his ramen. That's a very funny situation, and it's a nice element of comedic touch. So what is that like? Because that sort of is a bit of a trope. It's sort of making fun of it a little bit. I
Hmm.
think it's playful, fun. I'll add that. But what is that like, and how did that idea come about? Because it definitely occurs multiple times
Yeah,
throughout the entire series.
that's true. That's true. Yeah. Like, well, a lot of my inspiration actually was I was reading One Punch Man a lot during the time. So a lot of that like kind of satirical element kind of comes from that, and also because I was inspired by the artist, the original artist. You know, his art was crap, but his writing was great. So I was like, hey, I don't have to be like a top notch talent, to make it. I just need a good story, and I think my art's okay. I'm not gonna, but like, so that was able to push me, and but like I guess the ramen came from like honestly, I'm not really too sure. It just kind of like happened. We needed something for him to get triggered from, like he's just like a stoic samurai who's just eating, but then like his ramen gets destroyed. We're like, we need something for him to get angry. How about he destroys his ramen? And then we liked it, so then we're like, oh, let's do it again. This is funny. uh,
And we're gonna leave it at that because I think if we go any further, we're gonna start ruining a good chunk of this story. But I do want to give somebody and people a teaser before we dive into
mhm,
the film side of this. And one of the cool things, and I'm a sucker for this, is there is connecting covers and there are connecting front pages. And usually your arcs are either 3 or 4 uh, chapters, issues long, and they line up vertically, which is a very cool way how to connect the cover. So what was that like? Because I'm a sucker for that, and it's a nice teaser that kind of gives you a preview for the entire arc that is being put out there.
huh? Connect. Well, sorry. Can you explain that again? Um,
So on the website, the covers line up, and the front pages all line up to form one larger picture. And so they all line up to form one larger picture for each of the arcs. I don't know if you know
oh,
that.
are you talking about the webtoon?
Yeah, the webtoon.
Oh, you read the webtoon also? Okay, yeah.
And
Sorry, I
so
wasn't.
and so and so it's one of the coolest things that is out there because I love when people do this, and I love vertical connecting more
Mhm.
so than horizontal connecting. And this is an American thing that we do in America a lot to sell
Mhm.
comic books. And so I love that, and I thought it was a nice little preview for the entire arc when you're just scrolling through to find whatever chapter you left off on.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. What was it? I actually saw some another webtoon that did that, and I was just like, hey, that's brilliant. And no one else was really doing it, so I was like, why don't I just do it? Yeah. And like whenever I finish an arc, then I go back and then adjust everything. That's how I do it that way, so that like while it's getting updated, it's just kind of it's not connected, but I go back and connect it. So,
It's a very nice touch, and for those who are going to wind up checking it out, just if you start scrolling through the entire webtoon, which I should have started out with, I might add, but it really is a nice touch because it kind of gives you a preview. It also gives you sort of additional art as you're scrolling through it, and it's really just a nice touch.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I'm glad someone noticed it.
And now we're going to table it right there because you did mention the film side, and I think this is interesting in its own right as well. So you mentioned that your philosophy class basically got you out of writing a paper and you made this movie instead.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
So what was that like? Because that's very interesting when you have something that starts out as a comic, even if it's not the best comic and you have to kind of, I guess, upgrade it and redefine it. But you definitely have something that's in a comic format that then goes into another medium.
Hmm.
So what was that entire thing like, and what was it like even telling those stories? Because comic books and webtoons and that medium allows for one style of seeing it and experiencing the story, and film allows for a completely different one.
Mm. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because actually, like before, I was taking philosophy classes, but I was also taking movie making classes. So when I made the comic book, I was thinking in terms of like movie, like storyboarding. So then when I made the movie, it was kind of a nice, easy transition over. Yeah. So I was like, hey, this is great. And of course that too started off as just like a very whim idea. We're just like, hey, let's make a movie. And then we told everyone we're making a movie, and everyone was like, no, you're not. And then it kind of turned into spite. So I was like, yeah, we are.
Let's talk a little bit about this because the comic and the movie sort of have a little bit of different starts, and the webtoon as well sort of all have different starts, but they all sort of go into each other, and naturally they all can't start at the same place because certain things have to be set up. But what was it really like getting to tell the movie side and kind of not having to necessarily set up all of those details that you have to set up in the comic book from the start and kind of tell the story a little bit differently?
Hmm. Yeah, well, yeah, because we knew we couldn't make like a huge movie, um, so we so we were kind of taking like a short story approach. We were trying to make it feel like it's just a little snippet of an entire story. So we wanted to make it feel like the character's already established, and we want to feel like he's continuing his journey. That was kind of where we started off with, and then from inside that framework, we decided to tell a small story that like that affects his character in a certain way. So in the beginning, we see him introduced, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's the Shotgun Samurai!" So everyone knows him, and then at the end, he still continues his journey.
And there's been a bunch of movies. There's been a few of them. I don't know how many more you're planning to make, but there's been at least two at least. And they're out there. They're free to watch on YouTube. They're also free on your website, which we're going to get to in a minute. But what is that like? Because they are entry points into the comic book, and then the comic side of it is an entry point into the movies. And so you really have these two projects selling each other, which is a nice thing to do. And I think a lot of creators fail on that front when they do expand into cinema and into other entities such as novels and other sectors of medium.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah. Basically, yeah. That was kind of my idea. Like, because I want the movies to be connected to the comic. I want it all be one big continuity. Originally, the idea was the movies were going to be kind of more of a backstory kind of thing, while the comic was the main story. And we had a third movie planned, but I'm no longer in college, no longer living around the same people, so that's probably never going to happen. Maybe one day I'll turn that into like a small comic book, but yeah, that was kind of like the idea. And then like we were making the comics, and then like I said, like I wanted to people to watch the movie, so I was like, hey, let me throw little teasers to the movie in the comic book. I was like, make him mention something in the movie and throw like a blatant ad for the movie. It was like, watch the movie, find out what he's talking about.
And so, what is that like? Because you definitely are directing traffic, and it's quite brilliant marketing. I mean, I don't know if you know the story about where Hellboy actually appeared in another comic book before it actually came out, and they actually bought ad space. So Mike
Hmm.
Mignola bought ad space in another comic book, and there was like advertisements within the pages. And there's a big debate in the entire comic community about that. And so this is not that, but it's similar in many ways. And because you're directing traffic elsewhere, even if it's in your own project, and then that project further substantiates, and just from a business position, that kind of re-indoctrinates people into your comic book because now they're further invested, which is even smarter. I don't even know if you realize how smart that is because it's really brilliant. So what is it like to be able to do that and then just have things that provide backstory and then continuing the comic, and really now people are getting further invested and reinvested. It's really
Hmm.
cool. It's really cool.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I just thought it was funny at first, just
It,
to put a blatant ad in my own comic book for my own movie. Uh, and also, I wanted people to watch the movie, and I was like, hey, I'm kind of getting more traffic on my comic book, so I wanted people to watch my YouTube channel. And so I was like, hey, so I decided to throw it in there. And then also the movie, the second movie ends in a way that like actually if you know how like Marvel has the after credit scenes?
yeah.
Yeah, I put little after credit scenes in my movies that are actually the first scene of the comic book. Like I know it's hard to tell because it's like really low budget filming work, but like at the end of the first movie, he goes into a ramen shop and he meets George, and that's the beginning of the first chapter. And then at the end of the second movie, you see someone in the bushes spying on Shotgun Samurai and George. That's the beginning of the second chapter. so, so I tried to connect it that way as well.
And I think the only thing that I can ask now is where can people find this? Because I think it's going to be much easier to see it than to explain it.
Mm. Yeah. So basically, shotgunsamurai.net. That's like the hub for everything. Um, so yeah, and then that's links to all my social medias, has all my everywhere you can read the book and watch the movies. So yeah, one stop shop for Shotgun Samurai.
And now we're going to table that for a few minutes because there is something I do want to talk about that's more on the business side of all
Hmm.
of this. And that is you have a Patreon that I believe is involved with this that helps to fund it. You have an Indiegogo, which helps to fund it because this is very indie. I don't know, did you do a Kickstarter?
No, I didn't. No.
So I'm very curious what made you go the Indiegogo route versus Patreon over Kickstarter, because there's been a bunch of people who have sat in the seat you're sitting in to some degree, and there's a division with indie creators between Kickstarter and Patreon. So I'm very curious what made you go one way versus the other.
Well, I started with Patreon, um, but didn't not getting much traction on that. Uh, so then, and Indiegogo, they let you keep five. I mean, they take 5%. Kickstarter takes 7%. So that was pretty much
That's the
the main.
deciding factor.
Yeah.
The big difference when you're talking about large numbers.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Yeah. So and also I haven't actually started the campaign yet. I'm kind of just in the collecting email phase right now. And I didn't look into Kickstarter, but I heard Indiegogo had a mailing list feature. So that's kind of why I went also into Indiegogo too to help build up my mailing list.
And so to even talk about that, what are you exactly offering with Indiegogo? What are the perks? What is the mission goal? Because we're still in those early phases,
Mm,
but what can people get a ballpark estimate to expect when they support this project and they support where it's going? Because the
mm,
webtoon is pretty far in, and I don't
mhm.
know how far the comic is in beyond what I read, but that's what I think people would like to know to some
Mm.
degree. But
Yeah.
ballpark estimate of the
Well, I
installment.
have a pretty good idea. So, because since in the Indiegogo, people will be pledging and they'll actually be paying for it, I want to give them something more premium, for sure. So the webtoon, I have one more like chapter to finish the entire arc. Um, and I draw everything as a book first, and then I put it into webtoon. So everything's a book format already. So my plan is to finish the final chapter and make it one big graphic novel, and then pitch that on Indiegogo first. Um, so people can get like the full experience on Indiegogo, and then when I finally build that, then I'm gonna upload that to Webtoon. And also on Indiegogo, I'm planning to do like some kind of trading card. I've seen a lot of people like trading cards, and also a poster. So I just want to keep it simple right now because it's my first Indiegogo. So I'm gonna just have a book, a poster, and a trading card. And yeah.
And how long do you expect that Shotgun Samurai and graphic novel format's going to be, just to give even people an idea? Because you must have some idea of what
Oh, like in terms of
page.
pages?
Yeah.
Yeah, right now it's last I checked it was over 150 pages. Um yeah, so then I still have like the last chapter which maybe 2 chapters ago was supposed to be the last, but it kept getting longer and longer, so hopefully this is the actual last chapter. So maybe 20 more pages. Uh yeah, so basically yeah, so it's going to be a pretty decent read, I think.
And just to throw it out there, because I don't know what happens after this, but is there going to be more to this? Because what I've read, and I haven't read all of it, I'm the first person to admit it, but I read a good chunk of it, about half of it, and it's getting pretty good
Oh, thank you.
halfway through. Halfway through, so I'm curious, and I have an idea where it's going,
Mhm.
but is there going to be more after you finish this last chapter? Or is it that this project's done and then we're working on the next thing?
Um, so basically, we do have like basically plot points written out for the entire story. Um, so we do know what would come next. So my idea is use this Indiegogo, and if this is successful, then since most of like the drawing, the writing, everything is done, all that's left is printing and shipping. If it's successful, and I would use those funds that's left over from that to kind of fund the next book so that I can get that one done quicker, and then I can get that one, and then I can focus more on marketing, and then so then I can get the ball rolling even more and more so I can continue it because my dream is to finish the entire story. I want to. I mean, and even if I think even if it's not successful, I don't think anyone can stop me from drawing it. So I think I'm going to keep going. It just might be super slow.
And to talk about that, because obviously we're in the middle of COVID-19. I don't know exactly where you are in the world. You're in the US, but I don't know what
Yeah,
part.
California. Yeah.
You're in California, so obviously I don't know what how Cali's handling it, but San Diego Comic Con just got canceled, which is
Mm,
a big blow to the comic world, and it's a big statement. And I think they made the right call. Don't get me wrong.
mm.
I think they made the exact right call here. But I'm very curious, and you might not be at this stage yet, but I go to a lot of cons as a presenter on a variety of topics, and places that I was supposed to go to got canceled. So I don't know how that has been in both the creation process, the support process, as well as even you going to cons to push this out and promote it or even drum up business for it. How you've been affected by that.
Actually, yeah. Well, fortunately for me, I actually haven't had plans to go to any cons in the future.
You're in your infancy. You really
Yeah, I'm
are
in
in
my
that
infancy.
infancy, and
Yeah.
that's something that obviously every creator right now. And the reason why I bring this up is that I've been speaking to people who have been doing more American style manga, people who do indie comics in the UK, and
Hmm.
then you're really in your infancy. And so it's really interesting because when you get your book out and you get it into graphic novel format, the con scene is going to be a place that you have to be.
Mm.
So I'm very curious just how you foresee that going and how you foresee that COVID-19 is going to affect cons. because there's been a big boom in indie lately because of
Hmm.
it. And so I'm just
That's
curious
right.
how you view this and how you view that things are going to change in the
Oh,
coming.
okay. I think, yeah, I definitely think probably for, unfortunately, maybe another year or so. Maybe we won't see cons again. But yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if you can come back sooner, but it's, just the matter of the world. But I think once it starts rolling up again, we'll probably start with smaller. I think just small conventions will start popping up, like, because people like conventions. So if there's no conventions, people are going to do it, in my opinion. So I think it'll just naturally start sprouting up again, and it might be actually a good entry point for smaller creators like me, so I can kind of ride be a fly on the horse's back of one of these smaller conventions as they get bigger and bigger. So I'm kind of hopeful.
Is that your plan? Just so that we could say it was here first? Because I love
Yeah.
exclusive content.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That'd be great. Yeah. Yeah, you're
First
yeah,
announcement right here, everybody.
you're one of the first. One of the first. I was on another podcast a week ago, but you probably have the biggest platform for sure.
And now, having said that, and we kind of teased this a little bit before, but before we go, I do want to give you an opportunity, and we brushed through it really quickly, but I want to go through it a little bit slower. I would like to give you an opportunity to promote where can people find, buy, read Shotgun Samurai for starters.
Oh yeah, shotgunsamurai.net. That'll have all the information you need now and in the future. And if you go to, there's a link there to sign up for my Indiegogo and for the mailing list. And I'll also send out information about the campaign if you're interested in backing that in the future. But yeah.
And then also just your Twitter. I know you have a Facebook page, just like my Facebook group that I'm
Hmm.
putting together, which is just for those. I'm going to plug that right now. Sorry to take away from the plug here, but that group is called Indie Comic Connect, and it's meant to connect podcasters and indie comic people together for interviews. And you can find his page there. But what is your Facebook page as well as your Twitter, just so people can get it
Face.
access real quick.
Okay, sure. Facebook is if you just search Shotgun Samurai, it should pop up. There's a band or something. It's not that. So, and then on Twitter, it's my comic name is Donkey Madness. So it's Donkey underscore Madness underscore. So so you can, and all the links are on shotgunsamurai.net if you want to look at for it that way.
Well, I think we're going to leave it there, and I'm just going to
Okay.
say this right now. Thank you for being on, first off.
Oh
And
yeah,
then,
thanks for having me.
and then secondly, look, support is both monetary and it's social media. So one of the best things that you can do is that at times are tough and saying it with everybody. If you can't support the campaign because you're trying to take care of your family or you got to weather the storm and see where you're at, that's perfectly fine. But if you have internet, there's no excuse now not to follow somebody's Twitter, not to like somebody's Facebook page, not to check out the Webtoon, not to check out, the Indiegogo and say, hey, let me just follow this for a while. Not to shoot somebody a tweet, say, hey, great comic, or this looks awesome, or tell a friend. There's no excuse anymore. If you have internet, all of what I just described is free. So you can do it. It's just a matter of you wanting to do it versus it being an expense. And I've been saying it, and right now, indie comics, just so everybody's aware, are probably the hottest thing in the comic world right now because they are definitely not bland. So if you're like me getting sick of DC, Marvel, and a bit of Image, this is where it's at. And this is some interesting projects are coming. This is probably one of the more interesting things that, and I'm going to be slightly mean, but it appears a little bit like a joke. But then when you start diving into it, it becomes really, really interesting, really quick.
That's actually kind of the response I was going for. Looks like a joke, but when you read it, you're like, hey, something here.
So yeah, so we're leaving it at that. Go support. Definitely check out Shotgun Samurai. I don't think anybody's going to be disappointed in checking it out and reading it, and you're probably going to enjoy it, and you're probably going to go spend some money on that Indiegogo. So go at it, everybody.